Vita, and I'm also a remote worker and digital nomad. So I really sought out this remote lifestyle pre-2020. So it's been really crazy to see how the world has changed this past year. About a year and a half ago, I was living in Argentina working at a company there, and I really wanted a way to fulfill my travel passions and to really continue to advance my career and my personal goals while being able to explore different cultures. So I took on remote working and really went after it. And I've now worked in 3 different countries in South America. I was planning to do it throughout South America this year, but again, 2020 happened and a lot has changed, including that this has become the reality for many others. So I'm really excited to share more today about just what I love about remote working for all of you who may want to go remote, for those of you who may, due to 2020, have been kind of thrown into this reality and you might be struggling a bit to navigate that. And some of you may have kind of been, your reality has changed into this, but you're kind of enjoying it. And I would love to share more today on just how to really keep enjoying it and to thrive in this setting. So today I'm going to start with a warm welcome. I'm going to go into a bit about what the essentials are and tools for success, but I really want to leave more time for the material later, like culture, routine, and very important, boundaries. So we can get into that substance, and you'll be getting all of these slides after the presentation for you to review, so no worries there. And at the very end, I'm going to turn the tables and allow you to ask any questions you might have for me. So a warm welcome to remote work, where one of my personal favorites, yoga pants are acceptable. Your next meeting is just a few clicks and a link away. Stable Wi-Fi is your best friend and definitely mine, and it's left me at the times I've needed it the most. So I do want to give a disclaimer to always have a Wi-Fi backup plan. I'm currently located in Playa del Carmen and have been navigating my own Wi-Fi challenges, although we do have great Wi-Fi here, I've got to say, given some of my other adventures. But in the case that you get a live in-presentation demo of a Wi-Fi outage, I always have a backup plan and advise you to as well. And so always have that set up, and tethering is kind of my technique for that. And finally, you have the power to find that balance and flexibility in your day. And we'll talk more about that later. So what do you need to really thrive working remotely? Let's talk about the essentials. So back again to that stable internet connection. This is key. And if you're someone who's looking to go remote, I highly advise to look at those job descriptions, because at times for remote roles, they'll have certain requirements for Wi-Fi speed or download and upload speed. So really be mindful of those and make sure that you get your Wi-Fi up to speed before going through that interview process. Also, very important is that designated workspace. You want to have a separate workspace in your home or apartment for work that's comfortable for you. So while I move around a lot, this is constantly changing, but the key is to have this designated. So not your bed, maybe not the couch, but kind of setting aside a corner in a room or having a separate room to really designate as your workspace. And we'll talk more on that a bit later. Also, reliable lighting is key. You want to be able to see each other on your Zoom meetings. You want to make sure that you have that great lighting for when you're on calls. And then, as I know, many of you are probably working from home with family members, and there can be a bit of distractions. So those noise canceling headphones can really support in muting out that background noise. So definitely invest in those, especially if you have a lot going on in your home, to really stay focused in on those meetings. And now some added bonuses to add to your space. Creating an ergonomically friendly setup can be key, especially to take care of your body as you would in an office with maybe one of those standing desks that can be adjustable. And there's a lot of great content online for how to set up your space in this way. One of my personal favorites is natural lighting. A bit of sunlight in my day makes all the difference. So I highly encourage finding a good space in your home that has that light, if that's something that supports you. then plants and greenery. And if you're someone who's in a lot of spreadsheets all day, especially those finance folks out there, having that larger monitor can really support when you're navigating through a lot of tabs. So those are just a couple things that can add to your space, and I'll be giving a few more tips on that later. So along with those essentials, there's some tools that are fundamental, definitely in my remote role and in remote work in general. And this area is growing extensively this year, given that it's become the reality for many of us. But these are just a few of the very, very key tools that I wanted to highlight today. So let's start with video tools. Many of you are likely familiar with Zoom, as we're on right now. This area has been growing, and now Google Meet. There's Google Meet, there's also Microsoft Teams. So there's definitely different options out there now. But one thing to be mindful of across options is to get in there and check out those settings. Especially with Zoom, you may have noticed that they are constantly updating settings. For example, the waiting room recently was added. So I discovered that in a meeting when I had to start letting people into my meetings. So it's really good to not only get your settings set up beforehand when you get started on the tool, but to constantly be looking in there and making sure that they're set up for success for your meetings. Also, know your clients and your colleagues and whether they prefer that video or audio on calls. Some people don't love to get on video, so be mindful of that and know when it's better to be audio on a call versus video. And given that we're all on video often and sometimes we're not quite ready, I have a trick for all of you that could support, and that is the Post-it hack. So some of you might have one of those sliders that goes over your camera, but another trick is just to use a Post-it and put it on top of where your camera is. So that way, when you're getting up early and entering a call and you're not quite camera ready, you have that Post-it on there and you can just remove it and there you are, or turn on your camera after you remove it, just there as an extra security feature. Now, many of you may be familiar with Slack, but this is one of the key collaboration tools on both of my remote teams and on many remote teams. It's probably the most popular tool. Well, again, all of these tools are growing and there's other options. Slack, I would say, is probably the most commonly used right now. And if you're new to Slack or using Slack, one tip I have is to know your channels. So on Slack, there will be different channels depending on how your team is set up. So for example, you might have a general channel for all of the company, and then you might have specific channels to each team. So one tip I have is to really know your channels and know the purpose of those channels so that you can communicate most effectively across your team. And one way Slack really helps out is they have a feature that you can actually set that purpose up top of the channel and say what that designated channel is for. So this is for general team updates. So if you're not already using that amongst your team, get in there and update those, and that will really help with that clear communication. Also, if you're a distributed team, it's really important to be mindful of time zones. And Slack also supports with this in that you can go in there and set your designated work hours. For example, if I know I need to reach out to a team member, I can go to them on Slack, and sometimes they might have that little snooze icon. And then I know that, oh, they're not yet available. I'm going to hold off and reach out to them when they're online. And one best practice I strongly encourage you all to kind of go by with Slack and all these virtual communications is just to always assume positive intent. Many of us can be really busy, and some may be more direct and just say an okay or a K, but never take things personally. It's really hard without that face-to-face that you normally experience in an office, but I like to go by that best practice of always assuming positive intent. And I love to always portray my intent by having fun with those emojis. And I'm a big smiley face add at the end or exclamation mark just to really show that positive intent in there. And then finally, G Suite. G Suite is key on both of my remote teams as well. And this is kind of our knowledge sharing database. So I'll just give an example of how we use this on my team. So for example, we have kind of all of our centralized processes within G Suite. So if a process needs to be updated, someone owns that process in a specific Google document. They'll go through and make all those updates, and then they will share that to whether on Slack or an email and kind of set a deadline and let everyone know they can go in there and add their input. Everyone who's involved in this process, of course. So then we can all get in there and collaborate, add comments, add feedback, and then the owner of the document can get back in, go through those comments, and then we have our updated process, and we've all really been able to contribute to that. So along with Google Calendar, Google Email that we may be more familiar with, just using G Suite and Google Docs for this knowledge sharing is really fundamental in working remotely to get that collaboration going. So now for the fun part. After working in HR and in San Francisco tech space, I just love having the ability to really make an impact on team culture and to see that in the office. However, going remote, I was a bit nervous on how this change would be, given that my team is fully distributed. But I am here to reassure you that there are ways to really influence team culture and be an active member in this remote setting. It's just a bit different, but I love it, and I think it's actually really fun, and it's just unique from maybe your chat over a coffee in the office or a team offsite. So I want to share a couple ways of how you can go about really influencing culture. So one way is just being active on Slack or whatever communication tool you're using. So be an active contributor. If someone's asking about something and you really have that knowledge, don't be afraid to speak up to contribute. Engage in that water cooler chat. So water cooler, for example, is on my team, we have a Slack channel that's called Water Cooler Chat. And this is just a channel where you can share anything random, basically, that is happening that you want to share with the team. Like maybe your favorite Netflix show, maybe an article you found really, a hilarious article, like those BuzzFeed articles. And it's a way really to collaborate or to just chat outside of strictly work talk. So it's a great way to get to know team members kind of outside of that strictly work-related conversation. And again, knowing that's the purpose of that channel, everyone can kind of throw in fun things there and get to know each other. Now, if you're a new member of a remote team, I highly encourage you to just reach out to team members and offer to have a virtual coffee with them. We're all some of us have family members at home, but some of us are working from home on our own. So it's great to have that interaction in the day. And I'm sure that they would love to just hop on Zoom with you for 15 minutes and get to know you as you're a new member on their team. So get to know your colleagues, reach out, ask how they're doing. This is 2020. We're all kind of navigating the changes in our reality. And people really appreciate just saying something like, how are you? Or how was your weekend? And now you can do that just kind of maybe in a virtual setting on chat, or even when you're on that video call checking in. To give an example, recently on my remote team, I noticed that kind of our weekly calls were just going work, work, work. We're like going down a checklist. And I had heard on a podcast, just adding something new into your meetings to kind of open up the conversation to more about outside life and to really get to know your team members. And so I asked in a recent meeting just for everyone to share something that they had done for themselves that week. And I cannot express how well received it was and how much I learned about other members of my team and how we just got into this whole conversation from it, where we ended up actually starting a whole Slack channel on meditation that we are all passionate about. And now we're sharing meditations there. So it was amazing to see how one simple question could lead. We got to know each other in a different way. And we also started this whole new Slack channel where we're now sharing this passion for meditation. So really check in on your team members, support, create, and collaborate with each other. And one last mention for managers is in those one-on-ones with your team members, don't hesitate to ask just, how are you doing? And how are you adjusting to this whole work from home setting if this is new to them? And I'm sure that will be so appreciated, given that many of us are dealing with these changes in different ways. So just kind of giving that outreach can really support your team. So let's talk about routine. So I can't tell you kind of a one size fits all routine for remote work. We are all unique in our needs, and what works for one person might not work for another. So I want you to take a second and reflect on the following. So, how do you best function? Are you someone who's more productive in your mornings, or are you someone who works better in the afternoons and evenings and really likes having your morning to yourself? Now, do you function well on a strict schedule that's, say, 9 to 6, and those are your hours and you know it? Or are you someone who prefers the flexibility where your work is more deadline driven and you hit those deadlines and kind of can arrange your schedule based on, on how you like to spend your day? Now, if you're already in a role, your hours may be set, so you may know that it's that 9 to 5 and you're available. But if you're moving into remote work, you really have the power to reflect on this and to look into opportunities that really support the way you thrive and the way you're most productive. So, first, just reflect on what supports you to thrive. Ask yourself those questions. Now, if you know your hours, know that you need to plan this routine outside of those designated work hours. But if you have the power to set your hours, then really create your schedule around what works best for you and how you thrive. And one way I encourage you to try, if this works, if this can support you, is to calendar it. So reflect on how you want this to look and then put it either the morning before or the weekend before, schedule it out in your calendar. So literally that's, for example, just to give an example, it's say morning workout and then designated work time, lunch break, more designated work time, and then maybe you have time for a passion project in the afternoon. Put those blocks in, and having that set up in your schedule really communicates to you that that's how you want your day to look even before you start the day. And then after you have that in your schedule, it can support you with over communicating it by sharing your calendar with your team members, and then they're in the loop on exactly when is best to reach you because they really can see kind of the map of your whole day. Now, again, there's no one size fits all, and this might not work for everyone, but I encourage you to give it a try as you create this routine, especially when you're kind of trying to put that into action. So having those alerts with the calendar could really support. And then I just want to encourage you all to be patient with yourself. My routine is still constantly changing after doing this for a year and a half now. Constantly be testing, adjusting, and modifying your routine until you get to that sweet spot and what really helps you to thrive. And this could change over time. It changes when I'm in a different location, but be patient with yourself and really find what best supports you to really be productive and enjoy working in this setting. So I think I've mentioned it already, but I cannot stress enough how key communication is in remote work. This is so fundamental, just as it is in many areas of life. But I wanted to demonstrate it by giving an example that could happen on a remote team. So, for example, I'm the project manager on the team, and I spoke with a team member, Pam, this past Friday about this headcount report we had to send over end of next week to our client Zeta. But I get in Monday morning and I have an email in my inbox from client Zeta that says, "Hey, Kristin, we need that headcount report by 5 p.m. today. Can you get that over to us?" And as project manager, of course, I'm like, "Yes, we've got this. We'll get that to you by 5 p.m. And I know Pam on my team is responsible for this headcount report. Also, I know that Pam and I are in the same time zone, thankfully. So she's online or should be online right now. And I do know it's Monday morning. So I go to Slack and I say, "Hey, Pam, I hope your Monday's off to a nice start. Client Zeta just emailed that they need that total headcount sheet by 5 p.m. today. It's a bit urgent. Can you get that over to them by 5 p.m. and CC me? Let me know if I can support. Thank you, smiley face." So I wanted to highlight a few things I did there. First off, I reiterated all the details about this. I didn't assume that Pam remembered we talked about it Friday. Hey, it's Monday morning. It was just the weekend. I can't expect that anyways. I also didn't assume that, I also thought about how it's a Monday morning, and I kind of started off with, I hope you've had a nice weekend. I didn't just jump into the task. And then at the end, I offered my support, being mindful. Again, it's a Monday. Maybe Pam has a lot on her plate. And I offered my support there and positive intent with that smiley face. So a couple hours roll by, and I don't hear from Pam, unfortunately, which is very unusual. And I know on our team, the best practice is if it's an urgent request and I can't get a hold of someone via Slack, the next best channel is text. So I go to text Pam and I send the exact same message that I sent her via Slack, via text, because I'm assuming that Pam hasn't seen my Slack message. I'm reiterating all those details. And within a few minutes, Pam gets back to me that she's heading back from a doctor's appointment and is on it. And weights off my shoulders as project manager, knowing that this report's getting to the client by that time. So just to sum it up there, reiterating those details is so important. Knowing those channels on your team and where to communicate when something is urgent, communicating that urgency, and showing that positive intent is so important. One last thing there that I could have done better is checked Pam's calendar, because we all share our calendars amongst our team. So I could have seen that Pam was at the doctor that morning. Another place I could have checked, and highly encourage on your remote teams to do this if you're not doing so, is having an out of office channel on Slack. You can actually integrate that with your calendar so that it will, when a team member needs to put an out of office event, it posts it right to Slack. So I could have checked there to see that Pam had been at her doctor's appointment. Last thing to mention with communication is just sometimes we can get sucked into this hole of going back and forth via Slack about a topic, and we both end up confused. Don't hesitate just to call someone up or to put a link in there when it's a little more complicated than just to chat it out on a Slack channel. So I actually am loving the new Slack call feature, and some team members and I have been using it a lot, where we'll just like call each other up and be like, okay, it's just easier to talk about this on the phone. But the key is to over communicate, because that prevents anything from falling through the cracks. Always over communicate to be safe. And just that communication is so key. So now for my favorite part is taking care of yourself. I know many of us are navigating this whole space of our worlds colliding, being in a home with our work and our families, and also, again, going back to just the many changes that have happened this year. It's so important to take care of yourself in these times and to really create that space for yourself. So going back to that remote routine, really knowing yourself and knowing how you thrive. And also really making sure to take breaks. So I know it can be easy, and I get sucked into this too, where I'm working away at something and hours and hours and hours go by, and maybe I haven't even gotten up. So going back to that calendaring technique, one thing that supported me is calendaring in my breaks. And that might sound a little bit over the top, but just having that pop-up say like break or go for a walk, it really can encourage you to really follow through with that and separate from your work for a minute. In line with that movement is so important. Like I just said, it could even be incorporating the two as one, and having your break be taking a walk, going on a run, having your workout. But really getting that movement in your day is also so key, because in the past we might have walked to our office or even just walked to our car and then taken a lunch break, walking out to lunch, and having everything kind of in one space now. It's really on us to create that movement in our day, and it really can make a world of a difference. So one other suggestion I have is, if you have a one-on-one with a team member, or you have a sync where you don't have to share your screen, is just having a walking meeting and hopping on the phone and taking a walk while you are having that meeting together. That can really support in getting that movement in your day. And then finally, creating that designated workspace that you really thrive in and love to be in. And you can do that by decorating it with maybe some plants, some flowers or candles, whatever makes you feel good. Just like you'd set up a cube or a desk in your office, really set up this workspace to how you like to work. Maybe add a bulletin board with pictures of friends, or who knows, those post-it reminders. Just really set up this space so it's somewhere you enjoy being. So along with taking care of yourself comes setting boundaries. And this is extremely important in working remotely, just as it is in life. But now we have, again, these two worlds colliding in one place. We might be sharing the home with other family members, trying to get on these work calls, and those distractions can come in. So setting boundaries is so important to really kind of have this designated work time, but also to have that time for you, and to enjoy your evening and go about your day-to-day life and not all be work. You don't want to burn out and be working late hours of the night. And this setting boundaries can really support yours. So some tips I have are really disabling those notifications and disconnecting at the end of the day. So Slack allows you to set those designated work hours. And when you do that, it will turn off notifications after the time that you set as your end time for the day. Also, I encourage you to turn off those email notifications. If it's communicated clearly across your team, kind of how to get a hold of you in a case of urgency, it shouldn't be a problem to disable notifications because they'll know how to get in touch with you. So really, really work hard to disconnect at the end of your day so you can enjoy your evening. Another thing I recently did that I encourage you to give a try is writing out these work boundaries. For me, when I write something down, I'm committing to it. And I hope that this can support you as well, but kind of writing out what these boundaries are with your work. For example, I will not check emails or Slack notifications after X time. Another example could be I will take an hour lunch break and get out of the house every day, or something along those lines. Whatever you feel works for you and you really want to honor, write down as these boundaries. Now, all of my fellow people pleasers out there, practice saying no. I'm still working on this myself, but if you know you're at capacity and you know kind of what workload you have and you don't feel you're struggling to kind of get that time for your lifestyle and going into later hours of the night, don't overcommit yourself to things that are going to take away that very important time for yourself, right? Say no, and that's okay. When you have the capacity, definitely take it on. But if you know you're at capacity, say no, because it's so important that you have this time for yourself in your day and that you can really create this separation and balance between your home and work. So another suggestion I have is to really just block off that time for yourself. Just going back again to this whole calendaring everything, is block off that you time. So if it's, say, at the end of your work time, you time is working out, block off your workout. And do not allow non-urgent requests to conflict with that. The time for yourself is just as important, if not more important, than some of our work commitments. Like, it's so important to not burn yourself out. So make sure that when you block off this time for yourself, of course, be sure it's outside of your work obligations and meetings, but honor that time. Don't allow non-urgent requests to take away from that. So kind of hold that on your calendar and communicate. So with boundaries, it's very important to communicate it with yourself, but also communicate it with others because you set the tone. So really, most importantly, you honor them, and that will teach others to honor them as well. So if your boundary is not to respond after a certain time, hold to that. And if it supports you, you can create this in, say, a Google Doc and maybe mention to your team members, I'm really struggling to create time for my family in the evenings. I created this list of boundaries and I want to share them with you all because I'm really trying to hold to them. And I'm sure your team members will be supportive. Again, you're always being mindful of your work commitments, but really this commitment to yourself is very important. So I think I mentioned logging out and disconnecting, but I can't stress enough how this is important, especially when our workspaces maybe in the same room as our kitchen or living room. You've really got to separate. So I have a tip for you on how to create that separation at the end of the day. And I encourage you to give this a try, is to really create a logging on and off ritual so you can really check out at the end of the day, just as if you were leaving an office. So I'm going to give an example of how this could look. But again, think of what could work for you and try this out. But just like any habit, you've got to repeat it a few times to make sure that it really sinks in. So one example is you could wake up in the morning, go do your workout, go back shower, have a coffee, and then walk to your designated workspace. The second you open that laptop or log on, you've just entered your office. Then you may go about your day, have lunch, 6 p.m. rolls around, and maybe you know your designated work hours end at 6 p.m. And so it's time to end the day, no non-urgent requests. So you can really turn off all those notifications. You close your laptop, put it away in a drawer, and then maybe you take a walk outside of your home or apartment and just go get some fresh air or run an errand. And the second you walk back in, your evening has begun. You will not be touching that laptop. So walking out of that door is as if you were leaving the office. So find what works for you and try out this ritual. But again, repeat it so it becomes a habit. And I really hope that can support you in really disconnecting and having your evening for yourself, or whatever time in your day works the best for you. So I'm a huge fan of working remotely, as you can tell. And I know some of us might be loving it more than others. So I wanted to share some ways to kind of mix it up and have fun with it, given that it's the reality for an indefinite period, but there's definitely ways to really enjoy this. So one way to kind of mix it up a bit is just to change up your workspace. That could just be moving where your workspace is in your home or apartment, or it could be adding some new additions, like we talked about those workspace care items. Now that things are kind of opening up a bit, depending on where we're located, maybe it's when you don't have meetings or calls, going to a cafe outside that has strong Wi-Fi again, and doing some work for a bit, or if it's COVID safe, a co-working space and working, but really changing up your environment to kind of get some variety in there. Another way that you could do this is virtually co-working. So getting on Zoom with a friend or a colleague and working together and holding each other accountable. But it's almost like simulating that you're at a shared desk together, just in a virtual way. But virtual co-working can be a way to get that kind of interaction in your day when you are working remotely. And then have fun with Zoom. I mean, we've got all these new backgrounds now. I'm loving the beach one. Again, use it when it's appropriate, but have fun with that. Share gifts via Slack and get to know team members. And then I don't know if these are still a thing, given that it's been a bit that Zoom happy hours have been around, but having those Zoom happy hours with your team members, another way to add to that culture and to connect at the end of a week. So finally, I want to share some remote productivity tools, because one thing about remote work is it requires a lot of self-discipline. You don't have a manager walking by. You don't necessarily have someone checking in on you all the time. And so it really requires you to be on it yourself. So here are some tools that can support you with kind of managing maybe a lot of obligations while working from home with the distractions that can come up. So project management tools, some great ones are Trello and Asana. Another one that my remote team uses is Process Street, and it's kind of where you can set up all of your processes and share it with team members, to where as you get things done, it's just like checking a box, similar to Asana. Another very useful productivity technique that I encourage you to give a try, especially those of you struggling to take breaks, is the Pomodoro technique. And this is where I'm sharing a link, or this website right here, that can support, and you can actually use the timer on that website, and you'll have designated focus time. So I believe it's 25 minutes of focus time, and you'll start the timer, 25 minutes of focus times, and it will alarm you when it's time for that break. And then I believe there's 3 of them, and then it turns into longer breaks. So that can really help with like giving you that extra discipline to have that focus time and to take those breaks. Then finally, Zapier is a great tool to kind of integrate all of your remote applications. So you can create like workflows where if you get an email, it will like zap you via Slack. So there's just a lot of different things you can create there. And I know they have a free version and then some paid versions, but it can really support productivity to kind of integrate those tools. So I highly encourage you to try these out if you're struggling with that self-discipline and procrastination, especially the Pomodoro technique. And lastly, Zapier has an amazing blog of resources for remote team members, as they are a remote team themselves. So I encourage you to check that out for some other tips and tricks. But that was a lot of information, I know, and I hope it was helpful. And I just now want to open it up for any questions you all have on just navigating remote work or going remote. Just turn the tables and give it all to you.
All right. Well, while everyone is gathering their questions, I know how it goes. There's always lots of information being passed around, and it takes a minute to kind of digest everything. So, all right, here's a question. Are you going to share the slides? Yes, we will be sharing the slides. I will include this along with the recording and just some additional resources after the webinar later on today. So that'll all be included in there. Kristin, what I would like to know personally, because I have lots of questions as I'm getting used to, few months now into a full-time role again, and productivity and project management is not my strong suit, which is why when you talked about Asana, I was so excited because Asana has literally saved my life, has immensely decreased my level of stress and anxiety because of the organization. But what would you say, what was one of like the biggest learning lessons or lessons that you've learned from working remote? Whether it was something that just kind of like blew up in your face, or it was like a really big monumental moment kind of how you shifted and how you kind of came on top. I know that's a loaded question, so.
No, but it's a great question. I think it's boundaries, honestly, because I'm the type who can really overwork and just keep going and going, and like creating those boundaries and really knowing where my team members are and when we're on, and kind of arranging my schedule and that routine. I'd say routine and boundaries. Like I feel like I finally found that sweet spot of routine and boundaries to where I can really create that balance between working and just day-to-day life.
Yeah, boundaries for sure. Okay, last question for me, because then there's a few in the chat. Okay, what, in terms of boundaries, so this is something that I personally struggle with. My boundary is like at a certain time, I'm closing my laptop, I'm ready to be present with my family. What do you do when you get to that boundary point and you're like, oh my gosh, I still have like 30 more minutes of work? Like, cause that's what I personally struggle with, is like honoring my boundaries, but then having to get my work done.
I hear that. And that is challenging. And I feel you on that. So I would say what I do with that is, if it's work I have to get done, I have to get it done. It's work. Or if it's urgent. If it's not urgent, it can wait till the next day, and then honoring that boundary. But if it is work and I'm going 30 minutes over, I look back at my day and I say, okay, where could I have had those 30 minutes today? Like kind of what's that procrastination somewhere in my day and what can I do better tomorrow so that I can really get that work done, so I can maybe make it to that evening plan I have, say.
Okay. So kind of just like reviewing basically like where your time probably ran away. I know I can find 30 minutes in my day that I've definitely wasted. Do you recommend like a time tracker? Have you ever used those?
Yeah, so I love the Pomodoro trackers because again, that really helps with making those focus periods and then taking breaks. Because what I also wanted to say after that question is, but don't like fill in that 30 minutes where you have a break, because you deserve to have a break in your day, right? You need the breaks. But having like thinking on those 30 minutes of maybe I got, for example, stuck in a hole of Instagram and spent way longer on Instagram than I needed to, or things like that. But encouraging that you keep those breaks because that's important. But the Pomodoro tracker I really like because it does have that timer, and then it includes those breaks. So that's kind of the time tracker I've used, but I'm sure there are so many others out there.
Okay, cool. Thank you. All right, enough from me. Okay, so from Stacy. Oh, this is a good question. This is more of a general question, but with regards to finding a cafe or co-working space during this time, I love the idea, but find that I'm not sure what's available or safe to do. Any specific tips on that?
Hmm.
I know that's
That's a hard one.
that's a tricky one.
Where are you located? No, it's so like where I'm currently located, cafes outdoor are open, or actually both indoor and outdoor, but it's all how we feel safe right now, right? So if cafes are open and they have outdoor seating and they have strong internet, highly encourage you to go there. But I would check in kind of where you're located right now and what is open. It really depends.
Okay. Yeah, so Stacy, she's in Chicago. So Stacy, I'm in Chicago. I'm in Chicago as well. And I feel like I feel like the end of October is when things just shut down, and I don't want the end of October to come because that's usually when things shut down. But I think Stacy, from my personal experience, honestly, I feel like even just like sitting outside, like if you are able just to like sit outside in a park, maybe not necessarily work, just because of hot spots, unless you can, get a hot spot from your phone. Yes, definitely dreading the COVID winter. But something that I've actually started doing more so is just taking walks and just going like reading outside, just like bundling up and taking my breaks outside instead of working, because of course cold, there's not much we can do. But I do know from Chicago that we're going to keep our patios open as much as long as we possibly can. So hopefully there will be some space to kind of navigate and explore. Okay, awesome. Thank you, Kristin. Can you recommend different virtual team icebreaker tools as well as online group collaboration games?
That's a great
Ooh,
question.
Jackbox TV is a great online group collaboration game.
Agreed. We recently used that on the shower call. But and then many of you may have heard of, I don't, this might be harder in a team setting but House Party has that kind of way to connect on video with games. Actually, one of my current remote clients is a tool called Icebreaker, and it's like an event collaboration tool where they are creating that as well. But I will send you an email with some others after the call, because I know that there's a lot more of these.
Yeah, for sure. So Deepak, Chris and I will brainstorm, and we'll include some of those recommendations in the follow-up email, because I know, Kristin, we just did one for our Happiness Hub team baby shower, and I can't remember what the name of that is, but that one's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't remember the name of it though. Yeah, I forget, but yeah, that's a great call. We'll include some of those resources in the follow-up email. All right, so those are questions for now. Like I said, I know that questions always come up after, as we take all of this great information and actually apply it and implement it in real life. So I'm sure there'll be, well, if anything, there'll be productivity questions for me. So, all right.
Okay. Oh,
Awesome.
yes.
Yep.
Jackbox TV.
Is it Jackbox TV? Yeah. Jackbox TV is kind of more, we did that more for like our friends happy hour. Just because some of them take a while, but it's really, really fun and it's funny and it's hilarious. And, that's great. But we'll think of some other ones as well that you can use, like that one that keep slipping my mind. Okay. Go ahead, Kristin. You can finish up.
We'll share some others also via
Yeah.
email. But I really hope this was valuable for you all, and thank you so much for joining today. If you have any questions about how to be productive working remotely, how to go remote, if this is something you're passionate about, getting into remote work, it's a huge passion of mine, and I'm here to support, or just even navigating kind of this new normal of working remotely, please reach out to me. I'm also including a complimentary consult link here because I'd love to chat with you more if you're really looking to go remote and make this a permanent lifestyle, or even, again, just looking to navigate and really to boost that productivity kind of being in this setting. So please don't hesitate to reach out with any questions at all. I'm so happy to help. And yes, I'm a huge fan of remote work. I love being able to work. I mean, travel is my passion, and this has made a work travel lifestyle possible for me. And I really think that we all can enjoy it in different ways, but I do understand that some of us do love being in an office and want to go back soon enough. But please don't hesitate to reach out with any questions about remote work, or I'd love to support. So any other questions?
All right. Yes,
Yes.
we do. When you are in radically different time zones, do you have any issue, or have you had any issues in the past syncing up with your team?
So luckily, all of my team members are in the Americas time zones. Actually, one was in Europe pre-pandemic, so we kind of had a bigger gap. But this is why it goes back to communication, because there are challenges when you're distributed across the globe. But that's why communication is so key, and knowing where your team members are and knowing your deadlines to be sure that you can get in touch with them and that things can get done by those deadlines given where you're located. So there's a lot of factors there, but just really clearly communicating with each other and kind of knowing when you need to get something completed by, and then again, being mindful of where they're located, and it's not reaching out to them at, say, 12 a.m.
Great. Yeah, that's a tough one. I know we've done some work with some really big global teams, and specifically around boundaries and honoring boundaries, and the time zones is pretty crazy. But I'm sure doable. All right. So for Maddie, what tips would you suggest for getting yourself back on track after being distracted or not sticking to your daily schedule? Oh, I feel like this could be its own webinar.
Yes, agreed.
Only because this is also a challenge for me as well.
I mean, I'm going to admit that it's been a challenge for me too. But I think, again, it's that reflection on, okay, what's causing this? Like, why can't I focus? What's distracting me? And what can I do differently to really kind of honor my commitments and get my work done, and focus in? Maybe it's trying out one of those timers to kind of really have that focus time, trying new techniques. And again, I just want to stress of, like, be patient with yourself. Like, it happens to us all. We all get distracted. But really trying to do something differently to see if that supports you in kind of really focusing in. Those calendar blocks for me really support with that, and having those pop-ups that kind of keep me focused. So even a pop-up on your calendar block that says focus time, so that pops out at you, that could maybe help there.
Awesome. Yeah, another thing too that I would add onto it, because like I said, this is everything that I'm like really, really focusing on. So Maddie, another tip well, it's not really a tip, but it's just kind of awareness around. So when I find myself getting distracted or like reaching for my phone, I always, when I have to get something done within a certain period of time, I just put my phone in the kitchen, out of sight, out of mind. But one thing that I realized was, if I've been working for like an hour or a few hours and I've been exerting a lot of mental capacity and I start to get distracted, that's like my body's way, that's my brain's way of letting me know, hey, I need a break right now. So I'm going to try and look for things to distract from this, because what you're doing just might be a lot for right now. So when I start to get distracted or start, Googling other things or veering away from my work and my task list, that's just like a sign for me, just being like, okay, you know what? That's all right. I'm getting distracted. It's fine. Just let me go walk around the block, take a quick break, and then refocus. Because I've looked at so much research, but our brains really are only meant to focus on something for like 15 to 20 minutes at a time. So that's why, like watching Netflix, after you watch something, you start to pick up your phone and you start to do something, because our brains, even if we're engaged, our brains are not meant to take on that much information and do at one time. So I feel you on that, Maddie. That's just kind of something that I've experienced myself. So honor those distractions, because that means that you might just need a break.
I love that one too, putting the phone in another room.
Oh yeah.
Because our phone can be the biggest distraction of all, with the pop-ups and everything. And just really, like, if you have that designated focus time, maybe it's having your phone away for that focus time, and then when you're break, you can go check your phone, type of thing.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, even I've noticed, even with my phone like on the desk, even if it's like off to the side, it's still there. It's still
Yeah.
there, and it's still easy to pick it up. Yeah, out of sight, out of mind. All right. One more. How do you manage all the issues that naturally come up with traveling and moving while trying to maintain a regular daily schedule?
Wow, that is the biggest challenge. I say with patience and calm. I just say there's a lot of challenges resettling into new cities. I'm not going to lie, it's worth every minute of every challenge, and I grow from every one of them. But it requires me just to really take deep breaths and say, like, oh, this is change. Every change can bring a challenge, but like, I love that about it, and I love what you learn from that. So I think it's just by knowing that no matter what challenge happens, there's a way to figure that out. Like, I love Marie Forleo's quote, everything is figure outable. It's gotten me through so many abroad challenges. And I think it's in that moment being like, okay, well, this is not expected, but I can figure this out. And then just navigating it. And oftentimes what seems like a big challenge at the start is really not that bad after all. So just really staying calm and knowing that everything is figure outable.
I love that. It's a good book too.
Yes.
And change allows for possibility. So kind of just, especially when change is uninvited, like everything that's been happening this year, it takes practice, and some days it doesn't work, some days it does, but kind of just looking at things through a new lens, and instead of looking at, issues or challenges, that are troublesome, what if we just look at that as, hey, maybe I can build some new skills with this challenge. What can I learn from this new challenge? And how can this challenge, instead of, happening to me, what can this challenge do for me?
And that's the other thing, is like the possibilities that come out of it. And also every challenge you face, right, makes the next thing really, like, you grow from every challenge. So when the next challenge comes, it's really not as extreme as you think. Like, you got through that last one, you can definitely get through the next, right?
I love that. Yes, absolutely. It just helps with our confidence. I feel like just courage and confidence over and over. And I love that. I love that. Everything is figure outable.
Yes, yes, the best
But
line.
we have to give Marie Forleo credit for that.
Gosh, I had to thank her a lot for that because it's gotten me through so many challenges, unexpected things.
Everything is figure outable. All right, wonderful. Well, we are almost at time. Thank you all so much for joining and sticking around this afternoon. This was so helpful, Kristin, and I feel like, we need this webinar over and over and over again to remind ourselves of all of these remote tips. So thank you so much. And I know it's so great hearing from coaches who are speaking purely from experience, especially with, you moving to, Sophie's question, like you moving, trying to figure things out, battling a hurricane. Like that's like it's like a challenge that you're just like, if you can accomplish that, you can accomplish anything. So thank you so much. Really, really appreciate it.
Thank you all. And Jill, thank you. This was a lot of fun. I hope that it's been really helpful for you all. And again, please reach out. And if you're interested in going remote or you want to learn more, please schedule a consult with me and I'd love to chat more.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much. Please look out for that follow-up, that recap email, and Kristin will be copied on it, and we're humans behind those emails. So please just reply back and we're happy to answer any other questions you might have. So, all right, everyone. Well, enjoy the rest of your week. Oh my gosh, are we at Thursday? Yay. Oh my gosh, it's Wednesday. Never mind.
Wednesday,
oh my gosh,
almost
what
Thursday.
day is it?
We're almost there.
I talk about, I think I need that break now. All right, everyone. Thank you so much. Thanks again, Kristin. I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you. Bye all.
Bye.